Good Friday evening, everyone. I'm Eburnett. Out front tonight, the president's press secretary under fire.
That is not a single adjustment, as you said back in November. That is a major, dramatic change in the information.
Do you acknowledge that your initial characterization of the White House's involvement was to some extent a mischaracterization of the extent to which the White House was involved in the evolution of those talks?
Kristen, I think it's really important to... So, again, what role did the White House play, not just in making, but in directing changes?
The topic was Benghazi. This was not a friendly Friday press briefing. There were sparks, tension, and the press secretary, explaining himself, got snippy.
Jim, if I could, I've answered this question several times now, but I'm happy to answer it again if you let me answer it. These were intelligence community talking points that the intelligence community, led by the CIA, had. John, could I finish? You had a long time there.
Now, adding to the drama, the pre-scheduled press conference was delayed twice, and Carney finally arrived at the podium 3 hours later than first planned. There was a lot of tension in the room when he walked in. Why? Because a lot was at stake, everyone. Today, we formally learned that the White House and the State Department were heavily involved in the editing of the talking points used by the administration following the attacks in Benghazi, something they have previously denied. In fact, today, Jay Carney doubled down, saying that the White House made only one edit, changing the word consulate to the word diplomatic post. The thing is, there were 12 rounds of edits. Among the things taken out of the first draft was a line saying Islamic extremists with ties to al-Qaeda participated in the attack. Jim Acosta, who you just saw there, was in the room asking questions, and he's out front tonight. Jim, that was an intense press briefing. We don't usually see them like that.
That's right, Aaron, and I think that's because of what the White House said back in November when Jay Carney went to the White House press briefing and told reporters that only a single adjustment had been made. And then when you go through these emails, you discover very quickly, Aaron, that several adjustments were made and that they were not stylistic, as this White House has said repeatedly. They were content-based. They had to do with, as Victoria Nuland, the State Department spokeswoman, indicated in one email, that there was a concern about even mentioning this group that was linked to al-Qaeda because that might lead members of Congress to beat the State Department, as she put it, for not heeding CIA warnings. And you heard Jay Carney repeatedly throughout that briefing today say it was the CIA that was drafting these talking points. But the reality is, Aaron, is that, yes, the CIA was drafting these talking points, but it was an interagency process. There were a lot of people involved, including the White House, including the State Department. And this was a product that really all of these folks should be held responsible for. And I think that's why you heard so many questions today. And I think that's why the questions got heated. It's also why you're hearing from members of Congress saying they'd like to see new hearings. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the Republicans on that committee, just put out a statement this evening saying there needs to be another hearing.
Well, you know, pretty amazing that the State Department, you know, in an email, so the spokeswoman said they wanted to take something out because the Congress might beat the State Department up for not heeding CIA warnings. The original draft also included, right, that the CIA had warned prior. I mean, you asked a lot of questions, Jim, of the press secretary. You had a fiery exchange with him, and I just wanted to play a little bit of that for our viewers.
Okay. That is not a stylistic edit. That is not a single adjustment, as you said back in November. That is a major, dramatic change in the information.
No, I appreciate the question and the opportunity again to make clear that the CIA produced talking points that was a result of an interagency process on the morning of that Saturday morning.
But when you say
and to that
talking points,
let me just finish this, and then you can follow up. Then they produced, and from that
and from pressure from other parties that were involved.
I think I would point you to the numerous statements.
Jim, neither you or other reporters seemed fully satisfied with his responses. Why not?
Well, I think it's because I think there was a sense among all the reporters in that room, and mind you, we're not adversaries, we're just there to do our job, that there was a lot of spinning going on. And when that happens, you try to get into it. And speaking of spin, I mean, you heard Jay Carney repeatedly during this news conference accuse Republicans of trying to politicize this process, of saying this all goes back to Mitt Romney, the GOP candidate last fall, when he did in fact try to politicize some of this for his own personal gain. But if you look at what the White House is saying and what was said in these State Department emails that were going back and forth with other members of the administration, they were making political considerations. They were making political calculations in terms of what these talking points were to say, and when they were to go to Susan Rice, this is how they wanted those talking points to be laid out. And so, I mean, I think it would really defy credulity for anybody to argue that there weren't political considerations as a part of this process. The White House says, no, 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 this is because we wanted to preserve the integrity of the investigation. They said that all day long today. But if you look at these emails, it does feel like there is some politics also involved as well. Aaron.
Jim Acosta, thank you very much. Nick Burns is a former Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs. Ryan Salam is a CNN contributor and writer for the National Review. Ryan, you just heard what Jim Acosta said. It would defy credulity to say that the administration was not political about this. And certainly when you hear the State Department saying we took out the fact that the CIA had warnings about terrorist attacks in Benghazi because they thought they'd get beaten up because they didn't heed the warnings, is clearly political. 2 days ago at the White House, Jay Carney said something he said before. The only edits that were made by anyone at the White House were stylistic and non-substantive. And our Jim Acosta questioned that aggressively today. So did ABC's Jonathan Karl, who first reported the 12 rounds of changes this morning. I just want to play both of them.
You said that the only changes that were made by either the White House or the State Department were stylistic in a single word.
That is not a stylistic edit. That is not a single adjustment.
Is it a stylistic change to take out all references to previous terror threats in Benghazi?
It's not a stylistic change.
I think that's right. It's not a stylistic change. But I'll also say this. Victoria Nuland is a professional.
The spokeswoman for the State Department that wrote that email.
Who has served with distinction under Republican and Democratic administrations. I don't blame her. But here's the thing. The CIA wanted it to be known that they had provided warnings about how dangerous Eastern Libya was becoming. And I think that it behooved the White House to let the American people know that there were warnings as well. And I think that that's why there's a lot of frustration and anger. So again, the State Department is going to look after itself. They're going to want to make it, they're going to want to be sure that they're not undermining themselves and what have you. That's fair enough. But to the extent the White House was involved in this process, I think that that was important information that shouldn't have been left out, that there had been warnings.
And Nick, why would they have taken that out? There were warnings. We've reported on them before. That was in there. It left the CIA's hands saying that there were warnings of these attacks. And then it got removed by the State Department, according to the reporting now, by someone in the administration. How is that justifiable?
Well, I don't know all the facts, and I'm sure that no one knows all the facts right now because I'm not in Washington, wasn't part of the administration. All I can say, Aaron, is I've been in the position as State Department spokesman, and I've served in Republican administrations as well. And in general, it's not unusual. In fact, it's very common for administrations of both parties to have an iterative process for talking points on any issue. As new information is developed, as new people look at something, it's not unusual to have talking points for a public appearance to be gone over 6, 7, 8, or 9 times. So I don't find that unusual. And I also agree that Victoria Nuland is one of our finest diplomats, and she's a person of real integrity. So I wouldn't jump to conclusions here until all the facts are known. And obviously, if there are going to be more hearings, much of this will come out. But one more thing, Aaron.
Yes.
What disturbs me as a former diplomat is that the attention of the American people in the Congress is now completely off embassy security. We have embassies that are on point at risk in the Middle East, and the Congress ought to be voting full funding for embassy security. That, to me, is a real issue.
It's a very fair point. It's also a fair point that edits would be made. I think what's strange to people is that there was a denial that edits were made, and a very aggressive denial. Jay Carney, Ryan, also implied that any blame made for changes to the talking points, and he was very careful in this. Yes, there were edits. White House only made that one he was sticking with. State Department, it was muddy. But if you have a problem, blame the CIA. Here's Jay.
The CIA was the agency that made changes to the edits and to the talking points and then produced the talking points. The CIA on Saturday morning said we're going to draft these points. I would ask the CIA. The CIA.
Jonathan Karl from ABC pushed back. I want to play that quickly.
I think
the CIA original version included references to Al-Qaeda, references to Ansar al-Islam. The original CIA version included extensive discussion of the previous threats of terrorist attacks in Benghazi. Those were taken out after the CIA wrote its initial draft.
And then the CIA wrote another draft.
Based on input from the State Department.
Well, but here's what I've been saying,
Do you
John.
deny that?
How can you blame the CIA when even David Petraeus in his testimony had said, well, I don't know who took that stuff out. Someone did after it left their hands. Somebody.
You can see why resentment builds in this kind of a situation. I think it's fair to say that we absolutely ought to focus on the failures in diplomatic security that occurred before the Benghazi incident, despite the various warnings. But here's the thing. It was CIA personnel who were under attack in Benghazi. And when it seems that the CIA is being left to hang in this situation, you can see why there's a lot of resentment. And that's part of why this has become an issue. It's not purely because political partisans on the other side are trying to make hay out of it. It's because there are a lot of people internally as well who are frustrated with this sense that they're being held accountable, they're being blamed when they shouldn't be.
And Nick, just quickly, would you agree with the bottom line? Obviously, Republicans were making politics out of this in the fall, but there were clearly politics from the administration as well. This was an election season, and they didn't want this to blow up either.
Well, you know, I think, I don't know what the inside baseball was. All I know was it was a confusing week. There are a number of other American embassies being demonstrated against that week across the Arab world. There were there was a hateful video out there, and there was definitely a terrorist attack in Benghazi. Since I've served in government, Aaron, I can understand why an administration would have trouble piecing together over several days exactly what happened in Benghazi. But it's clear now. It was a terrorist attack. A specific group attacked our embassy. We lost 4 great public servants. I think we should take the politics out of this and focus on embassy security.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. And everyone, please let us know what you think and whether you think there should be more hearings to determine why changes were made to the CIA's assessment.